If you're like me, and you got no life and there's nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. You'll be glad you did.
And there it is. We are live. The unbelievably clever and creative Animation Truman Show jingle done here in Creta. And what a fun day it's going to be today. Well, you can't get rid of it, Darren. You can't get rid of it. Well, it's been a good live stream, Darren, that you had. It was definitely fun today, and I have my tasty beverage, which today is a light, fine Pilsner beer from Miller. And yeah, you know, the intro, it was just, I was in the studio about 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, I should make a jingle. I should make a little jingle so I just pounded out the chord chart and sang it, and kind of whipped off. I really should probably make the animation a little better, but it was definitely a fast job. So anyway, so what are we going to do today? Well, I want to welcome Alan Dan to the live stream. It's really been cool, and it's kind of gratifying, frankly, to have guys with Alan's level of talent showing up. Of course, Ed Tadeo was here last night, and so I'll do a quick recap in case you're curious, like the really fast recap of what the heck is it that I'm doing over here, which is basically this. If you look at this timeline, I've got a 24-minute episode of this cartoon, and in point of fact, there's actually a episode 2, which is mostly animated. As you can see, there's one section here in the middle that is not. So got two 24-minute episodes of this show. As I say, mostly animated. I'm going through and I'm going ahead and releasing 4-minute webisodes here on YouTube, kind of one chunk at a time. And the plan is to hopefully get a little bit of traction for the, for the characters, for the story, for the concept. Yeah, the whole thing. Writing the music, doing all the webisode that you've watched. I actually did do all the voices in that one. Yes, I'm the voice of Asha. And I'm the voice of Melchizidek, too. And when I want to, I can also be Darren T. I need to learn to imitate your voice, though, Alan. What is it you used to say? You used to say, like, it was something like, all of you, it was, I gotta think what you say. It was like, you used to end your Mr. Dan Insane videos with something about, that you're all splendiferous or something, and, you're all just blah, blah, blah. I can't remember. I feel silly trying to do it without, if I heard it, I could do it. I'll guarantee I could nail the voice if I heard it, but anyway. The full series, well, basically because I've written and directed multiple live-action movies. I've got a couple chick flick movies that you can see on like Tubi. It's actually on the Encourage TV YouTube channel as well, but they're you can look this up. I'll put it in the chat. But basically, there's Healed by Grace 1 and 2 are live-action movies that I've written and directed over the years, and so anyway, I have a good relationship with a film distributor who, actually, the reason I switched from something I was working on before, kind of an anime thing, sort of a dystopian anime, the reason I switched to Salt and Light was just because after having a discussion with my film distributor, he really sparked to this idea, because this idea I came up with 10 years ago and then just let it sit on the shelf while I was making live-action movies. And so with that in mind, just kind of shifted gears a year or so ago and started working on this. So there is a pathway to the market for the show once the episodes are ready to release, But at the same time, I don't mind maybe trying to gain a little bit of awareness and traction by releasing like 4 or 5 minute webisodes on YouTube, and then at the point that it winds up going to distribution, assuming that does happen, then I can always just pull the YouTube videos down and let them rock and roll with it. So, Kodeman. Hey, hi Kodeman. I don't remember seeing you here before. Good to see you again, Golden Slime. If there's any way I've missed, please forgive me. What the heck are we doing today? Well, I wanted to cover, thank you, Alan Dan. Well, as I said, I have nothing but respect for your work, and I say this literally. You guys, all you guys need to know that. And I always wondered, by the way, Alan, I always wondered why you switched YouTube channels, because I was there when that happened, and you were doing the Mr. Dan Insane thing. And when I was first learning OpenTunes, going back 2-3 years ago, those videos were extremely useful to me for learning OpenTunes. And then I remember you switched YouTube channels. I always kind of wondered what brought that on, why the switch. But anyway, you don't have to share that here if you don't want to. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Yep, the Mr. Dan Insane videos. I loved it. I thought that stuff was so cool. What I like about your style is I see your style as just the quintessential modern sort of Cartoon Network. Your style just totally fits in the mix with modern television. I mean, it's really wonderful. Okay, so it was about YouTube. Yeah, I've got a friend who has a drawing channel that, and he and I go way back to our CGI days back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when we were using Hash, and then I started using Blender and, of course, 3D Studio Max. But he had a YouTube channel that was making him like $50,000 a year, and then when they changed the rules, it dropped to like $200 a month. I mean, it was just insane, the difference. So what he said to me is, well, it put my kid through college. So I guess there's that. So anyway, what I want to talk about today, is really two main things as far as sort of technical knowledge, as opposed to just getting on with the business of the next shot that I need to work on the show. And the two main things are, let me just cover this implicit hold. So implicit hold, Darren just talked about in his live stream, and I'll just say it works as advertised. The basic concept is that if I draw a character here, so just for fun, we'll draw a character similar to what Mr. Dan Insane would draw. So we'll do something of this nature. Something along these lines seems like something that Alan Dan might do. Okay, so you got this character, and the default behavior in Krita and in, frankly, most animation software is that if you create a drawing and then you go down here and let's say I want to do something different, you just start drawing and it creates a new keyframe. Well, the behavior in Tahoma and OpenTunes up until today, basically, with this pre-release, so this is in the nightly builds kind of thing, is that any drawing you put in your timeline will stay in force until you add another drawing. So before, what we had to do is extend it down, which would cause any later drawing to ripple if you bothered to put it in there, which was a little problematic. Or you would have to put a drawing down here and then right mouse click here and tell it to fill in the empty cells. Now it looks like it's doing it smartly, meaning that if you tell it to fill in the empty cells on a level that has the implicit hold in place, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't turn these into live cells. So if you wanted to, for some reason, the obvious way to do it would be to go like this, just go to another level and then drag it back. I mean, you could do that. But one thing I was happy to see was that this still works. So if you click to the bottom and then you can still ripple edit just the same way you could before. It looks to me like you can't ripple up. And that's okay. All you do if you want to ripple up, I'm going to guess that this will work, is you select the cells and hit Control X. Yes. So if you hit Control X to cut, you'll get that ripple edit effect. If you hit delete, you will not. So in other words, if I grab these cells and hit delete, actually, okay, it does not chop them out like it used to. So that means that the implicit hold is kind of something you either choose to use or not, and you're sort of stuck with. As far as I'm concerned, it's a great thing. And there's probably a way to convert these cells into real cells so that if you really wanted to, you could actually get rid of them. Let's guess that maybe it'd be Control X and then take this and drag it. No, that doesn't work either. So yeah, it's kind of an either or operation at this point. Hope that makes sense. So, okay, quick glance at the chat. Boy, there's a lot of stuff. Your Saitama Chibi. You know, it's funny that Kodaman mentioned that because I've been watching One Punch Man, and my goodness, what a great show. Such a great show. Oh, I even watched a couple episodes just today. So, okay. Now, here's the other thing I wanted to talk about today. So we covered implicit hold, and if you want to use implicit hold, you need to download the nightly builds of Tahoma, and I'm going to assume that you guys are all smart and that you can find it pretty easily. If you Google Tahoma 2D nightly builds, you will find it. Okay? Excuse me. So the other thing, I better take a drink of my tasty beverage. I wanted to talk about what I want to call fast ink. And here's the mindset behind it. The mindset is, if you're like me, and you may not be, but if you are, well, let me actually show you this. If we go back to Krita here, I drew this character from the scene I've been working on this week, just last night in Krita, using the technique I'm about to kind of show you guys, and I found that the characterization of the old man was vastly improved. I really just did a better job working this way. So I thought, okay, this is significant. Can it work in Tahoma and Krita? Here's the concept. The concept is I like taking a loose, like this is a charcoal brush. It's one of the My Paint brushes. And when everything's really loose and sketchy and I'm really in the zone, you know, I'm having fun, I really would love to go straight to ink. Okay, yeah, I've watched, Adyan is asking if we watch Naruto. I've watched Naruto. I'm not a huge fan of Naruto. I like Fairy Tail, personally. I think Fairy Tail's a pretty good show. I've watched that whole thing. But anyway, okay, so I'll not jump to the chat too often here because I tend to get really fragmented in my speech, and I can't finish a sentence. I try to finish sentences, and I fail repeatedly. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. It turns out, and you guys may have known this, but it turns out that if you hit the number keys in Tahoma, as you can see over here, it toggles between brushes. Okay? So when you're in that loose mode and you're drawing, you can actually just hit a number key and immediately ink that baby. Okay? And I think the reason that kind of works for me, so I just hit the 1 key so it switched back. I think the reason it works for me is that I'm in a fundamentally different mindset when I'm doing a pencil test and doing a real sketchy, loose kind of thing, versus when I go to ink and paint, which for me is usually a completely separate step. So it's more cerebral. It just doesn't have that loose, fun. It kind of loses some of the fun, frankly. Right? So staying in that loose and, you know, fluid mentality without interruption is kind of a cool thing. Well, the question you might ask, though, is, well, wait a second. One of the quintessential problems with Tahoma 2D is that if you... sorry, wrong brush. If you're trying to draw on a single layer, traditionally, especially if you have good, strong lines, if you switch to a standard Tahoma brush, its coverage is sketchy at best. In other words, Tahoma kind of struggles with knowing whether you really, really wanted to cover up that pixel right there or not. If I hit erase here, you'll see that there's a break in the line. And you'll probably agree with me that that's a bit ridiculous. You would really, you know, like, when would you ever want that behavior? You would not. Okay? Well, what I found was that if you actually use a My Paint brush for your ink work as well, that problem seems to be somewhat mitigated. You've got a little bit more control over the coverage when you use one of the My Paint brushes for your ink as well. And it's still, as you can see, it's still totally procedural. You can change the color on the fly and blah, blah, blah. So then the question becomes, well, how do you get rid of the pencil lines, right? Well, I think, because I discovered this a long time ago, and it didn't quite work for me, and I think at the time I didn't know what I'm about to tell you, which is that when you erase, if you click this little box here called selective, the only thing that gets erased is the current palette entry color. So that means that you can do what I'm doing, work really quickly, smack in your ink, and then clean it up all in one swoop. So I find that to be a really fluid way to work. You know, I like that. Okay, so one question that might come up, because around here, of course, we're pretty software agnostic within the, I suppose, limited selection of Tahoma, Krita, and Blender. So then the question would become, well, how do you do the same thing in Krita? And the way you do the same thing in Krita is you would actually have an ink brush. So let's just say there's your brush, okay? And if you hit the X key, Krita will toggle between foreground and background colors. So right now you can see it's toggling between black and red. So I tend to pencil test with red. So what you do in Krita to accomplish the same thing is you draw your Mr. Dan Insane character. And then you just hit the X key, ink over top of it, let's say. And I probably should zoom in so that I can actually make relatively smooth lines. So then the question becomes, how do I get rid of the red? Because it's all baked into a single layer. And the answer is, it's kind of a two-step, frankly. Filter, colors, color to alpha. For me, that works pretty well. You can dial that in, and you're going to get rid of most of that color. Now, there is going to be some alpha channel residue that remains in this, such that if you were to do a fill operation, and we'll see if it works here, we'll give it a try, but if I do a fill operation in behind mode right now, it might not fill that great. Now, it kind of did, but if you look really closely, you can see that there's still some noise, it didn't do a nice clean fill like you wanted. And the reason is because, as I say, there's kind of this residue in the alpha channel. So the way you can kind of fix that is hit Control M to pop up a curves operation, and then go to the alpha channel and just clamp that. Okay, if you really, it's basically a cleanup operation is what this is. So you can clamp, you know, kind of like that, let's say. Now, again, I reserve the right to be wrong here because it still might not be perfect. But let's see. Now we got a nice clean fill, see? So there you go. That's what I'm talking about. So two ways of doing the same thing. In Krita, you would just hit the X key to toggle between foreground and background. And when you do your cleanup, if you save your cleanup for a step downstream, like you've done some animation and stuff, don't forget, this is really important, that Krita 5 does give you the ability with any filter to make it multi-frame, which means it's going to apply the same filter to all your animation frames. Now, to be fair, you can accomplish the same thing by creating a filter mask, which creates a non-destructible filter addition as a layer. But the key thing to remember with multi-frame is that it's only going to be applied to frames that are actually selected in the timeline. So you need to select your animated keyframes in the timeline, then add the filter, and Krita will go ahead and add that filter to all the frames. Okay? Making sense? Hopefully that's making sense for you guys. Okay. Toon's Smart Raster is horrible when using my paintbrushes because of blending. I tend to stick with regular rasters. You know, and I would say I used to feel that way. And by the way, I think Zuko did probably chirp. Zuko, the African gray parrot, is pretty quiet today, but he might get a little chirpy. We'll see. Okay, so yeah, I think I've covered that pretty well. If we actually do the cleanup step here, so I'm going to select the number 1. So I'm selecting my pencil. I'm going to hit E the eraser's in selective mode, and boom, I've instantly cleaned up my art. Okay. Now, just for completeness, I'm going to close this shape and double check. And when we turn on fill check, we see that indeed we do have nice, good, clean, closed shapes. Okay. So now the question becomes, well, and what you might be alluding to, by the way, just voids in your comment may have to do with the thing I mentioned at the beginning, where when you do your ink work with a standard OpenToons brush, you do get this problem. Like if I have a soft touch right here, you can mitigate this by going into pencil mode, which gets rid of or turning off pressure. So you can mitigate it, but if you just look at it, you know, kind of out of the box, it doesn't look very good, right? So what I've found is that the opposite of what you suggested in your comment is actually the case, which is that if I use a My paintbrush for the ink work, I tend to get better results, and I can really dial in the brush. Well, then the question does become, well, how do you dial in the brush? And what I found was I went in and I grabbed this particular My paintbrush. It's kind of like a technical drawing pen, but so let's grab this. But out of the gate, it's a little thick, okay? So what I did was I produced that up here, and I changed the settings, and the key settings were I changed the radius to 0.1 and the hardness and the pixel feather both to 0.5. And that gave me a brush that, for me, if we turn this back into a standard Tahoma brush, you'll see that these two brushes have a very similar character. They're not exactly the same, but they're pretty darn close for ink work. So anyway, so then the question becomes, there's yet another question. What happens if you use My Paint, different colors, raster layer above each other and change the colors? Alan, Dan, let me get to that in just a second. That's a great question. When you talk about anti-aliasing, well, let's put it this way. There's a few things that one could talk about in that area. If you take pressure off and put pencil on, obviously you get lines that are not anti-aliased. And you get that in exchange for a stronger guarantee that you're going to have nice closed shapes. In my experience, if I go to my level settings and give it 100, an anti-aliasing level of 100, what I found is that in practice, I mean, you know, it looks exactly right. Right? So the aliasing problem really isn't a problem. It's only a problem if interactively while you're drawing you find the stair-stepping distracting and it actually harms your ability to draw in some way, you know, which can happen. So separate raster to subframe since all in one is weird. Well, I agree with you, and by the way, this does speak to your software development to a degree. When I was doing my own coding of maybe this type of a thing, meaning that I can show you here really, really fast. Well, at least I thought I could, but for some reason I'm looking at my web server and the folder that I was going to tap into doesn't seem to be there. That's kind of weird. That's kind of weird. So I won't bother with that. But basically I created a drawing program using JavaScript on the HTML canvas. And when I was thinking about, I didn't go very far with the software because basically the software I was using did the job. So I didn't see going into a development phase to solve a problem because I didn't want to create a commercial product or anything like that. I was just trying to solve my own problem. And what I kind of feel coming through from your comments seems to harmonize nicely with the way I thought about it. In other words, I thought about it like you want to think of it as you've got layers, but then you've got sort of implicit sublayers within each layer for maybe ink and paint and possibly individual colors, shadows. you know, because there's a certain subset of layers that always seem to come up again and again in animation, and you kind of want a way to sort of collect them all into a single thing. Of course, you can do that with a subscene in Tahoma. You can do it with a grouping in Krita. So it becomes an organizational problem. Let me see. Tahoma knows when you draw a different color above each, it kind of cut their quality. Yeah. Okay, so I think what Alan Dan is referring to is kind of what I was talking about earlier. Okay, this is a powerful deficiency in OpenTunes and Tahoma that's always been a problem, which is that if you create lines, we shouldn't be in pencil mode, because normally you're going to want to have pressure. You want to have a little bit of ability to, you know, have some pressure sensitivity, blah blah blah. And then if you switch to a different color, the software can't decide if you really wanted to paint over. I mean, look at what it's doing there. I mean, that's comedically ridiculous. Like, there is no scenario in the history of Earth where that would have been the desirable behavior. And it's been the desirable behavior forever in Tahoma. Now, speaking to the issue of anti-aliasing, what's it look like when it renders? Huh, pretty bad, actually. It looks like the anti-aliasing didn't even work on that exact area where I did that. So what am I missing here? Did I turn the anti-aliasing back off? That does not look any. Ah, there we go. I'm sorry, guys. My bad. It's always 100. So you can kind of sort of make it work, but the way that blends together makes no sense. Like, I can't think of a use case where that would be the desirable behavior at all. So, yeah, subframes, I assume in the sense of kind of like sub-levels. I think if you mean what I think you mean, then I would think of it as sub-levels. Yeah, it's like exactly. It's just like it doesn't know what to do. And again, that's always been the case. But is this an effective workaround? Now, if you're saying that the level of aliasing here is unacceptable for you, I could buy that. It's not great. But then again, we're not looking at actual size. This right here is actual rendered size. Okay? That's what you're actually going to see on TV. So it almost looks fine already, let alone when you've got a level 100 anti-aliasing going on. If you zoom in, not great. Not great when you zoom in. But actual size, I can't really see the problem at the scale that it's actually going to be reproduced at the end. So I can go either way with it. But yeah, by all means, man, we'll just connect through Discord, and I will try to tune into your next live stream or whatever. So, gotta take a sip of my tasty beverage. Okay, what else am I gonna cover here? Okay, I covered the brush settings for doing a more satisfactory ink job using my paint brushes. That's the settings. Radius of 0. And that's the only things I changed on that brush right there. I'm not going to click it because it'll probably reset all the settings. So another thing that came up was I thought, well, this is going to be probably pretty normal for me to be using. So what about saving my palette? And that's pretty simple. If you go down to the lower right hand corner, there is an option here to save the palette as, and also, quite usefully, save as default for a smart raster palette. So that means if I go to a different layer completely, or level, I guess is the proper nomenclature, and I hit the B key and create a new level, it goes ahead and brings up that exact palette for me, so I can keep rocking and rolling the way I said. So you guys, your mileage may vary. You guys might not find this as useful as I did, but I think for me, when I think about the whole quest to, well, let's just draw a picture of Mel here. Okay, so let's draw Mel. I have nothing but fun when I'm pencil testing, okay? And I'm sure a lot of you guys would agree with this. When you go to the ink and paint stage, at least for an anime type of style that like I'm kind of adhering to here, you do find that you always lose something, right, in the ink. The vitality or the looseness of the pencil test kind of goes the way of the buffalo when you when you ink. And all I'm saying, friends, all I'm saying, not trying to be Mr. Know-It-All here, but what I'm saying is that for me, when I can instantly just smack that in there as I'm doing the pencil test, for me, I just feel like I can kind of keep things a little looser, a little more accurate to what I was sort of trying to feel when I did the pencil test. So we'll see. We'll see if this really becomes a kind of a permanent part of my workflow. Time will tell. But the initial indications, and by the way, that really should have some thickness to it. The initial indications are, and that does not look like Mel, I committed the cardinal sin of bad characterization, being off character in my own drawing, which is pretty bad. Okay, so anyway, well, and one thing Darren's alluding to too is that, and I'm not going to go into it because I haven't. There's a new feature in Tahoma that allows you to put your ink and your paint in separate levels. Which really, what that really means is that I can do a fill operation on this layer that's continuing to use this layer as the borders, right? So the ink lines create a border for fill operations, and the ability now with OpenTunes or Tahoma, I'm not sure which it is, but I think it's Tahoma, gives you the ability to put your fill operations on a different level. And you could do it multiple times where you do your painting like the way Ed Tadeo does in Krita, where he's actually putting every color on a different layer. So, you pick your poison, kind of do whatever you think is right for you. So anyway, as far as technical software feature stuff, I did it in about a half an hour. I've covered what I wanted to cover today. So now the question becomes, what are we going to do? They're making a vector stroke to fill behind the outline. Yeah, more or less. I mean, if you look at the algorithm that a standard paint bucket fill type of operation follows, it isn't a huge jump in the software to say use this layer as a guide to decide where to either color a pixel or not, but actually do the coloring on a different layer. I mean, how complicated is that, right? It's like, seems pretty basic to me. And in that scenario, you would probably want to have the option to either smack it out to a different level or not, just depending on what you want to do. I have the conceit of trying to keep everything packed into a single layer, probably more than I should. Usually when I go too hog wild in that direction, I wind up regretting it and needing to separate things back out again. So anyway, it's what I do. It's what I do. Okay, so now I'm looking at Darren's last comment. Oh, got you, Darren. Referring to sketching. Yeah. Well, see, that I've explored those things. I mean, if you were going to accomplish the same thing here, potentially, let's just try it. What it would involve is saying, let's turn the opacity of this layer down. So let's just see if this works. The chances are it's not going to be interactive enough. Okay. So let me see. Page up and page down lets you toggle between layers in Krita. Okay. So why not? Well, I guess we might want to use something we can see. So why not draw? Let's draw a shape, and then just hit the down arrow and smack it in there. Smack the up arrow. So here's another one of those sort of Dan Insane type characters. Down arrow. So I would say this is a equally viable approach that's probably better. This is probably a better approach for anybody because you don't have the cleanup step. Now you just turn this off and you're done, right? Now, and you can pick this apart, of course, because my ink lines aren't particularly clean because I'm sort of moving fast here just for demonstration purposes. But you could turn on smoothing, turn the smoothing on. And again, just use page up, page down to toggle. So let's just create a little shape here. And I'm sort of testing the ability to do the work cleanly. So I'm making the shape, and now when I turn this one off. So, yeah, I would say a layer-based approach to the same thing in Krita is not the worst idea in the world. If in Tahoma, which is a pretty responsive program most of the time, I don't really think there's a good way to toggle from here to here, though. So, and plus you would also need a way to have the ink lines in one layer create the borders for the fill operations in another layer, which, as I said, I believe that is possible now. So I'm looking at Alan Dan's comments. If you like that approach, you'll love what we do. I expect this. That's why I was curious about it, Dan, because my suspicion is that with you being the designer, being that you're coming at it from a very pragmatic, a practical, and creative vantage point, you're probably going to make design decisions that are much smarter, or at least more applicable to real world work than someone who's coming at it from a technical programming vantage point. I talked about this actually in the live stream either yesterday or the day before. And by the way, you guys, if you really want, I mean you may not, but if you guys want if you want to go a deep dive into my brain about business and sort of some of the things that, let's just say, sort of prevent us from achieving our goals and that type of thing. The live stream from yesterday, the earlier one in the day, so it would be 2 live streams ago, you will find interesting. It's a bit of a deep dive into psychology and business. And I speak with some authority as a guy who's been in business by myself, for 30 years. So, I've kind of seen them come and I've seen them go, and I have clients all over the country, and, I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to business stuff. Kind of, sort of, take it or leave it. But my comment in the live stream the other day about development was that, what was it? It was the idea of opacity in software. The idea of opacity in software is, put it this way. The example I gave was this. I'll make it really, really fast. In Krita, you have a way to organize your brushes. Simple, right? Okay, and what I said was that developers, and Krita is done the same way your software is, Dan. It's Qt and C++, so there you go. Software developers want to be, I don't want to say clever in a snarky way, because they're really trying to do good work. They're trying to do cool stuff, right? And so what developers tend to want to do is create a tool that allows you from within the software to do something useful, like, say, organize your brushes, okay? The problem is that the software developers developing that very simple capability from within Krita is inherently opaque, meaning there is no other way to organize your brushes than the tools that they provide. I argue, as a longtime software developer, that is a fundamentally stupid way to approach software. It's like the dumbest thing possible. Because think of the hubris. You're assuming that you're actually going to do a good job of implementing it, and you're assuming that you actually have a good idea about what to implement. And the fact of the matter is, in the real world, the likelihood is that you're wrong on both of those. Why do I say that? Because the only way, it's like doing an animation. What do you guys actually do? You animate something, and then you play it back and see if it looks right, right? So in the real world, when you're actually trying to get something creative and useful done, what you do is you execute, and then you have a feedback loop of seeing what's wrong with it, and then you fix it, and you correct it, and you build it up to a quality level. The underlying assumption that you do not want to make is that you have a snowball's chance in hell of getting it right on the first try, as a design decision and as an implementation decision. The odds are you will get it wrong in both directions the first time you try. And so when you approach software development, assuming that that's the case, you would say to yourself, okay, what is the simplest and most transparent? Well, you'd start here. You'd say, and again, I know I'm being redundant from the live stream the other day, but it is a good example. You would say this. You'd say, if I want people to organize their brushes, then in the Krita application folder, I'm going to have a folder called brushes or something. And there's a simple text file that's just a list of brushes, and the name of that text file tells you what the category is. So it's as transparent as possible. It's right there, and if Krita happens to do a really crappy job, which it has historically always done, a very bad job of managing resources, it is better in the last two versions, I will admit, than having a transparent system that the user can override you. So think about what your mentality is as a developer there. Your mentality is that the user knows more than I do. That's the right mentality. So we want to make it as simple and as transparent as possible. The problem is, it's not going to be as cool. That's not as cool. And let's take that to its extreme and take it to the ultimate uncool. What would be the uncool version of that? Well, the uncool version of that would be that the only way to customize your brush organization is to go into the folder and change the text files by typing into them. That would be extremely inelegant and not cool. But the problem is, that approach tends to be super, super stable. And when you're trying to, I agree. Oh, Dan, dude, don't get me started. I'm with you, exactly. We love Krita, but we hate Krita. Because as developers, it is so obvious to me in so many ways about Krita over the last couple of years. You can see the hubris of the developers coming out through the software. They're assuming that, well, the hubris is that they're saying we know the best way to do X, Y, Z, and you just have to suffer through our decisions, and you're banking on the fact that the decisions we made were both good decisions and that we did a good job of implementing those decisions. And the problem is, they often don't. Okay, so I say all that with the caveat, there's a very important caveat, by the way, that Krita 5 is a definite step forward in stability and capability. It is definitely an improvement, and I'm very happy with what they've done. But I did also mention yesterday, probably, or the day before, that you don't, the key feature with Krita 5 that's the killer feature is, of course, the transform mask. Okay. The transform mask is very simple in that it says that I now, for the first time, can do what I couldn't do before, which is keyframe animate. There you go. Okay. Well, I'll tell you that if you took this layer right here, put it in a group like this, just create a group, and then you cut this into two pieces so that you have two levels of transform animation going on, one atop the other, it's gonna crash. Okay. So the new killer feature is not difficult at all to crash. Not at all. And it's kind of comical when you take a step back and you realize that this capability that's so amazingly cool has been present in OpenTunes ever since OpenTunes was released, the first version, right? And of course it's been in Blender for 22 years. So I don't agree that it sucks. These softwares each have their own weaknesses and strengths. And when you get comfortable with the interoperations between the two, you realize that what looked like a really, really killer problem is not as big of a problem. Meaning, you could, like for example, here in Krita, if I wanted to, I could take all these layers, select them all together as a single group, and now I could hit Control A. Let me double check that I got this right. I can go Control C, and I can actually just paste the whole kit and caboodle. All the layers composited together as a single group into Tahoma 2D. Unless it doesn't work. See? So it's like, okay, all right, problem solved, Whatever Krita can't do, Tahoma can do. So where's the problem here? All right? Well, basically, it's not a big problem. It's a little problem, right? And most of our problems are kind of little. So anyway, I'm going to start a new project here because I really do probably need to get to work. And we need to go over here to the show and take a look at what the heck we got going on and what we need to improve. I feel that the most recent shots I've done have been an improvement. Dan, you're still here. Okay. So Dan, you had commented when you looked at the webisode that it looked like cutout animation with some frame by frame. That's a good assessment. I prefer that someone wouldn't have that impression. So I think I have to do a better job. Thank you, Dan. That's very kind. I have to do a better job. Meaning that what it's supposed to be is frame by frame animation with some supplementary secondary animation from digital tools like the plastic tool in Tahoma. That's really what I'm usually going for, right? So I have an anime mentality which says that the most important thing, because I'm thinking like an editor, having made films, I think in terms of the shot. Like, what is the key pose that best captures what this individual shot is supposed to add to the story? That's the most important thing. Well, if you think of it that way, that also leads you to the mindset that says, okay, the most important thing is the drawing. Get the still drawing right. Make it look good. The movement is actually secondary because, especially with dialogue, usually people don't actually move that much, right? And the Japanese with anime have gotten this down to an art where they've really figured out how to get good economies into the production process, right? So here, what we have here, for example, this shot was done in Blender. Well, what did I do? Okay, so look at that. What I did with this shot was I had a single drawing of Tianara, and then I used shape keys to, of course I animated her waddling up there, but then I just used an animated shape key to do the shrug of the shoulders. I just deformed a mesh. So this is all one drawing. And there's some pretty good acting there with just one drawing. You totally get her attitude, what she's trying to communicate to this blind man. She's trying to be kind to the guy, all with one drawing. Well, if you can do it with one drawing, the only reason to do it with more than one drawing is because the aesthetic of frame-by-frame animation is, important to what you're trying to accomplish. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They're both totally valid approaches. What I'm saying is, I suck. I'm getting better every day. But if you look at the final frame of the webisode I released, it kind of shows you where I'm at because, it's not the final frame, but it's the second to the last one. Is that this shot here, this shot was done anime style, where I did the whole thing as frame by frame animation. And when I do that, I think I tend to do better work, actually. It just feels more, professional or whatever, right? Because I think, I do have a talent for that, and I'm trying to get better at it every day, of course. What'd you say? Well, by the way, the other thing about using Blender for this, and you could do the same thing in Tahoma, is that this shot was actually done with completely wrong characterization, and I changed it like a week ago. And all I had to do is change the one single drawing, and all the shape keys still worked. So, actually, I may be misspeaking here. Come to think of it, I'm sorry, guys. I may have redone this shot in Tahoma with the plastic tool. I think I did, actually, come to think of it. But I still did it with a single drawing, so. All right, I'm going to take half a second here and look at the comments. There are so many interesting comments from interesting people. I love you all. I do. So you think about it as half animatic in a way. Yeah, actually, for sure, because I'm going from a written script. I did write a screenplay, a double-length pilot, basically, so it's a 48-minute, roughly 50-page script. And then I turned that into a storyboard. And when I did the storyboard, I didn't really work out the timing in the storyboard because I knew that on average with a cartoon like this, you're going to wind up usually with about 12 to 15, maybe as many as 18, maybe as few as 6. But you're going to kind of average out 12 shots per minute is what you're going to have. About 5 seconds per shot. That's just what's going to happen. aggregate. It's just one of those things that you just find out is true. Like in a movie screenplay, you find out that no matter what you write, it turns out that one page of screenplay averages out to be about 1 minute of screen time in the movie. And I found that to be absolutely true, having made 8 movies. It just works. So same thing here. So basically what I did was I created the storyboard, and then in a perfect world, you would have a completely procedural workflow where what you'd have is a stupid drawing here of Tianara, but I would be able to take that drawing, clean it up, polish it up, and I can interactively choose to move right into animation or into cleaning it up and doing ink and paint. It doesn't matter. In a perfect workflow, it'd be completely procedural, and it doesn't really matter which step you do next because you're always building on each step inexorably towards a finished result where nothing's lost along the way. That would be my ideal workflow. Frankly, Tahoma gets me pretty close. Krita used to be worse. Krita's worse because it's both a... Excuse me, I'm belching in everybody's ear. It's a benefit and a detriment that all of the data in a Krita file is baked into the Krita file. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's both. It's actually both. It's a bad thing because it makes reuse more difficult. So the way Tahoma does it is better because all the assets that you create are actually stored on your hard drive and can be reused in other scenes. That, of course, goes back to software development. It depends on the fact that the software developers implemented this workflow in a way that doesn't actually cause crashes and problems and blah, 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 So, but you can do the same thing in Krita because you can insert a file layer. So I could take a graphic right now and drag and drop it in here and load it as a file layer, just like you do in Blender when you link, where you can't edit it, but you can... because you're just pulling it in off the hard drive, and if you change the image on the hard drive and reload the Krita file, it just updates magically. That's really what you want, generally, is as procedural of a workflow as possible. So, and I'm not switching between screens like I should be here, by the way. From what I watch, I don't think you suck. I don't think it's insane. I think it's cool. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think it was cool. But, I've run the numbers on this, and what I've determined is if I literally sat and worked on this 8 hours a day, it would only take about 4 months to generate a 24-minute episode. It's not that big of a job. I mean, it's big, but it's not that big. What bothers me is you need 2+ softwares to make your final broadcast quality delivered. So I would argue whether that's a problem. If the software interoperates pretty seamlessly, then what's the difference between opening a second modal window and jumping to another piece of software? Now, I think that's probably where Adobe's kind of got it right. I don't know because I'm not an Adobe user. Although I went to high school with Mark Hamburg, and Mark is the guy who pretty much turned Photoshop into what it is today. He and I hated each other in high school. Me and Mark Hamburg. We're friends on Facebook though now, so. So let me see here. Have you ever watched any Blizzard animation for the game Hearthstone? Not specifically, no. Blizzard's been around for a long time, dude. They were around back in '98. I mean, they were early adopters of 3D Studio Max, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. Watching their stuff since the 90s. It's a unique style. I'll have to check that out. I'm not talking about their normal 3D. Okay. But what they do with 2D warping is impressive. Everything in the warping domain is impressive. And it does come back to interoperability. If I could draw... like, for example, the fact that I can cut and paste from Krita into Tahoma and then deform something with a plastic tool, I love that. Okay. Would it be even more awesomely amazing if I could draw and paint in Krita and cut and paste into Blender? Just in one swoop that only takes 10 seconds, get from the art in Krita to an image mapped to a plane in Blender, which I can then deform and use shape keys? Absolutely. Well, what do you actually have to do? Well, what you actually have to do is save the image to your hard drive and then drag and drop it. Well, okay, so it takes 1 minute instead of 10 seconds. But it's still, I mean, come on. You know, all the capability is there. With your software that you guys are developing, Dan, my exhortation to you guys is that whatever you develop into it from the standpoint of features, it is, at least for me, as a guy that's trying to get, you know, kind of real work done, I would say that stability of the features that are there is infinitely more important than, you know, featureitis. And the mindset I talked about earlier, where you assume that having an extremely like when I write code, I write twice as much comment as I do code. Like I'm going to have way more documentation baked into the code than the code itself. Because what I've learned is I'm going to return to that code 2 months from now and I won't remember what I did. Right? So hubris doesn't work for me. I have to assume I'm not smart enough to remember what I had in mind with that clever little algorithm, right? So when you approach it that way, where you say, okay, well let's make this as transparent as possible, let's make it stable, and then our mindset is that over time we're going to discover from the users what's important, you know. Now there's a problem with that. Actually, let's go back over here to home, and now you got me on a path here. You got me on a little bit of a topic. This is important to what Alan Dan is doing. Okay, if you think about it this way, if you think about software development, okay, so, and if you want to look at a really bad example of how not to do it, look at PAP. You know, look at plastic animation paper. I mean, here's the guy that had a very solid program, you know, with limits, but what it did really well. And then what's he do? He says, well, we're going to completely scrap the old version. We're going to rewrite it, and it's going to be so amazing. It's going to be so great. It's going to be so, oh, golly, you just are going to have orgasms over how great the new version is going to be. And he first announced that, 7 years ago? And I've been on the sort of alpha beta test program, and what a complete piece of, well, okay, expletive deleted. The software is garbage. It's worthless. It's less than worthless. It insults. The worst thing of all is that at the alpha level, as an alpha user, it's like I'm sitting here being your victim, right? I'm your victim where I'm going to be victimized by your software just to help you out. And what do? You go run the alpha, and you not only have to go back to their software and register it right at the start, which is insane because the only reason you have the software is because they sent you the link so you could download it because you're on the alpha list. Now, how stupid can your approach to business be than to completely alienate the people that you need the most in order to do a good job? Think about how stupid that is. That's what I call ASAP. ASAP, folks. As stupid as possible. And that's what the current state of plastic animation paper is. It's vaporware that doesn't really exist, and they probably are never going to finish it because there's something, I don't know what it is, because he won't say, he's not going to admit it, but there's something badly broken in his development pipeline, and there has been for a long, long time. But, getting back to my point, here's my point. All right? When you look at software development, here's the problem. This is the scope of your development. Now you release something that's maybe pretty capable. It's got some good things going for it, but the problem is, especially if it's an open source project, which I assume this isn't, is that the people that are going to be the most vocal about what is needed in the software are literally newbies who've never done anything. So most of your feedback's coming from this group over here who actually never completed an animation in their life. Okay? I mean, I'm not trying to be cruel, but that's the truth. These people are people that are actually credible practitioners who really could help you. Okay? Well, the problem is that those guys are professionals that are already using tools, and they're not necessarily the same people that want to buy your software. So there's got to be some, as I'm thinking out loud here, it seems to me that there needs to be some value proposition that attracts these people into your beta group so that you have actual professionals that are giving you feedback. Now, in your case, you are that. you serve that purpose with your group because you are a practical real world animator who's actually, sort of made a living doing it kind of thing, right? But it's quite difficult because most of the people that are going to give you feedback are going to be, I would say, again, as I'm thinking out loud about it, the most important thing for Al and Dan to do as the designer of this software is to trust yourself, actually. And don't actually be too open to all these people that have all kinds of opinions about what the tool should do. But initially have a humble set of functionalities that are absolutely rock solid, reliable, with probably a backdoor, like the thing I was saying about the resource management in Krita. Just simple text files. Anybody who makes an argument, they say, well, we don't want to do that because that's not very performant. Oh my God, that's so stupid. I mean, performance is the least thing. The least important thing is performance. By far. Not even, there's no contest. Performance is the last thing to ever be concerned about. The more you add, let me see, the more you risk. Oh, that's for sure. But it'll be fun to take a look at what you're doing. I'm sure I'll have some opinions, but what do I know? I'm just, I'm just a guy who probably has too many opinions. I'm the core at Seva programmer. Yeah, right. That's good. Yep. You're the man. Okay, let's get to work here so that the people that aren't into the programming thing aren't completely Dave, what are you doing, man? Okay, so I just want to scan through here and find out where I'm at. Okay, yep, we got that. So I guess we got that. I'm trying to get up to the, here we go. Here's the shot I just did. That's working out okay. Okay, so yeah, this whole region, guys, you might want to give me an opinion about this. I'm going to throw this out there since there's a few of you out there. Let me switch to this screen so it's full screen. So my question is this. We've obviously got one of the shortcomings of the show right now is that we have a bit of a smattering of styles. Okay, in other words, I've evolved as an animator and as a painter and as a, I've evolved. So some of these shots that were done a long time ago are very simplistic, cartoony, and it's certainly right there. And to a degree, the characterization of Mel is, feels a little different. It wouldn't be that hard to fix that, but I do wonder, do I really need to, that background painting? How important is it to make that background painting sort of match a little better what we see back here, where it's a little more painterly? Is that important? What do you guys think? Let's get an opinion. At the end of the day, I have to decide, of course, but I am curious what you guys think about that. And by the way, see you, Darren. Every opinion matters. Well, that's a good attitude to take. And I think it's like everything else in life, there's a balance. The balance is between very firmly trusting yourself, but yet at the same time not drifting into that, that hubris kind of thing where you think you know it all. So there's a balance, for sure. Because sometimes it's like a comment I've made with film editing, is I've made the comment that as an editor, if somebody previews your movie, what you find is that even a young child can tell when the edit isn't quite right, when it just doesn't flow well, like a little kid can tell. You don't have to be a film expert or a filmmaker to know when an edit's wrong. And so in that sense, every opinion does matter because you can get so buried in the process that you lose perspective, Anyway. But I digress, as I often do. So the question is, do we need to update that background paint? I'm kind of thinking it needs a little work. Do we want to do that now? I'm gonna have to dig into, I really feel like doing more character animation type stuff. here, we're probably okay, but boom, this shot sucks. This doesn't work. Mel is so off character, it's stupid. So let's see what we can do with that. I hate to tell you guys this, but I might actually have to cut this live stream short today. You know why? It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at this time of day, if you can believe this, I have the sun shining right in my eyes right now. It's like I have to duck down. I need like a baseball cap or something. Let me go grab a cap. Oh my gosh, that did the trick. Fortunately, my older son gave me a Florida Gators hat because he's been taking classes at the University of Florida. So I'll put on my Gators hat, and this is shot number 136. So let's go ahead and jump over to Krita, as I'm betting you any amount of money that this shot was done. I need to save this, by the way. I bet this shot was done in Krita. So let's follow our naming convention, which is going to say minus 136. And there it is. Okay, so minus 136. Let's see what we have. Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do right now before I get out of the gate is, I think all I have to do is raise his eyes up, actually. His eyes are just too low on his face. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hit Control R. One of the features of Krita 5, and it's a killer feature that brings Krita back up into the class with Tahoma, is that Krita 5 remembers its render settings. Okay? So that means that if I save the render settings and re-render this, any other time I come back into this Krita file to re-render for any reason, it's going to remember, and I can just hit Control R and immediately re-render to the right location, which is super cool. I've been wishing for that for like forever. Which shot is this? This is 136. Okay, so we need to go to shot number 136. There it is, right there. In the render folder, select that folder. We're not doing JPEGs though, we're doing pings, because back then I was rendering pings, and the file name needs to be 136 dot. It should complain, and it is complaining. That's a good thing. That means that it found the right location, and it's overwriting the image sequence that's currently in the shell. Taking a drink of my tasty beverage. So Krita is not the most amazing program on the planet in terms of rendering speed, but it's pretty good. I am working with sunglasses, exactly. Well, I'm not. Actually, that's not true. I don't have sunglasses on, but I do have blue filter glasses on. And then also my handy-dandy baseball cap. Well, sometimes you just got to put on your cap. And that's just what you got to do. All right, so let's go back over here to the show and see what happens. And there it is. Everything seems to be working as advertised. And so now, all right, so now this is an interesting state of affairs, my friends. What do you do when you need to make a single change over a large group of frames? All I want to do, I'm pretty sure actually if I just raise his eyes up, we're going to be in good shape. Okay? Here's how I would do that in this case. Number one, I'm going to duplicate Mel. Boom. Now I'm just going to hide that layer. I don't need it right now. Now, number two, I'm going to put Mel in a group, and I'm going to add another layer on top of him. Now this layer is not going to have any animation in it. So what does that mean? That means that whatever I put in this layer is going to be copied over top of the entire rest of the sequence. Okay? Now that may be possible or not. It actually depends on whether I animated his body. And it looks like in this case I didn't. So in other words, his head never moves. And by the way, just to be clear, we could probably improve this shot a little bit by allowing his head to move a bit. Put a little more acting into it. That's fine. But that's not where we're at yet. So, and by the way, I am saving my work. Save early, save often. As Darren T likes to say, as Dave likes to say, save early, save often. All right, that wasn't the greatest Darren T voice, but Well, we can't bat 1,000, can we? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is in this layer, watch this. I'm going to hit the G key, so the freehand path tool. And I'm going to sample his skin color, and looky. I'm just going to draw a shape around here. Okay? Now that shape is going to prevail over the entire shot. So I'm looking closely, and yep, right there I can see. Right there's a little spot I missed. So there we go. So now, okay, that's, this is one of the weaknesses of Krita, by the way. The freehand path tool always does curve interpolation by default, which is stupid, because I've never, in the years of using Krita, I've never once used curve interpolation. So it's basically a smoothing function. Like, they always assume by default that you would want a bunch of smoothing. But I don't want a bunch of smoothing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge this layer down. Merge with layer below. So now what that did was it put the skin patch over all of it. Okay? Cool. Well, yeah, but Dave, now he doesn't have any eyes. Ah, but we have this other layer we copied, didn't we? Now watch what we're going to do. This is going to be fun. We're going to put this in a layer, and we're going to add another layer. And this layer, I'm going to turn this layer off, by the way. This layer is going to be in erase mode. Well, why would you want to do that? Why'd you want to put it in erase mode? I didn't understand that at all. That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it does if you start erasing things. Right? So now we start erasing stuff. Okay. And now, when we turn this layer on, we should be back to where we started. But now, how long did that take? 3 minutes? Now we have the eyes in its own completely separate layer. Cool. So now all we got to do is merge the group, which means bake that down. And then here we'll merge the group, which means bake that down. And now, this merged group, what we need to do is add a transform mask. If we transform it, it's only going to transform the first frame, or whatever frame we're on. Okay? So what we need to do is add a transform mask. Now, just so you know, this is going to get a little trickier and a little uglier, probably. Why is that going all the way down to there? That's a little strange, but we'll ignore that for now. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn the transform mask off, and this layer, I am going to... I'm just thinking, there's some erroneous stuff in here. Let me see what happens if I grab it here. I'll tell you what, we'll go with it. We won't worry about it until it becomes a problem. So I'm going to hit the A key, click this, and just raise that up a little bit. You say, well, wait, Dave, you just introduced a bunch of noise. You're introducing some problems. Well, yeah, but I'm going to be able to erase them again, the same way I did a minute ago. So let's not worry about that. Let's just go back to the beginning and see what happens. I think I actually moved it too high. So that, as far as being on character, he's way closer. I'm going to actually say that I want to stretch this just a bit. And I'm just moving this around until it feels right. Until I go, oh, there's Mel. Okay, so that seems to have done the trick for me. If you want to play it safe, friends, turn off your layer and duplicate it before you do the merge operation. That way, if something went wrong, you've always got a copy handy, right? So let's flatten that layer. Flatten, 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 flatten. Okay. So now I bet you it worked. Okay, so characterization-wise, he's way better now. But we do have a problem where we're covering up a bit of his headband. So let's just do the same thing we did before. Let's hit the G key, put it in a group, and then add an erase layer so that we can then just kind of mask out the stuff that's problematic. And then it looks like there's a little bit of other patching we're probably going to have to do as well, but no big deal. So I'm again hitting the freehand path tool and just chiseling, really. Just chisel out a little bit. Okay, this is going to be a little trickier, but let me turn this off. Ooh, that didn't really feel like it. Why is it not? Oh, I'm in erase mode. I'm stupid. Now that's a little non-intuitive. When you're using an erase layer, you don't want to be in erase mode, because it's wherever you paint is actually what gets erased, because the erasing is a function of the layer blending mode. So that might be a little non-intuitive for some of you guys. So I'm just looking closely here to see if there's any artifacts that are popping. Right there's a little bit of an issue. But you know, I'm going to fix that the old school way. So let's just merge this down. So I'm going to merge that with the layer below. So now that erasing is baked in, okay? So now what I want to do is go to this frame right here. Boom. And let's just fix this frame up. We'll just do this the old-fashioned way with a brush. The manly way. Yep, we're just going to do it the manly way with a brush. We'll sample our ink lines, and the fact that they're slightly darker probably doesn't hurt anything since we're over top of that green. So I think we're okay. I think we're okay. Let's rewind. And now what we're going to do is add another patch layer. Just to, just some due diligence here on the, if you look closely, and by the way, I'm going to turn the smoothing off. There's really no reason for the smoothing to be on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add just a little bit of paint. Just a little bit of paint, baby. Alright, let's see how that looks. Not bad. Not bad. I think we fixed it. Okay, so let's go. I gotta get my hotkey here right. Control E is to merge group, and Control Shift E is to flatten down. Okay, so what I want to do is merge the group. Control E. Okay, so now I've got his eyes and his head in two separate layers, and everything is working as advertised. So let's go back and look at the other shot, or let's look at the shot in the show and see the difference. So there's what's in the show, and let's actually make this. Okay, there's actual size. This feels like it's cropped in a bit in the show, doesn't it? It doesn't feel like it's really moved up that much, does it? What we got there? Let me look at this. Did I make a boo-boo? I'm actually shield my eyes from the sun. Okay. I'm kind of feeling like maybe I want to just raise this up a slight bit more. Let's turn this off and this on. Yeah, it looks about right. Just not quite sure if I took it far enough. Well, we can always just add another transform mask and see if we like it better if we... It looks like snapping might be on. I don't know. For me, that feels about right. I guess we're okay. Let's render it. Control R. I mean, his characterization does feel a lot better now. And it does appear that he's maybe a little closer. His eyebrow's a little closer to his headband. So... Okay, I'm looking at the chat here. Hi all, meeting's over. Maria, you have the hand arm in the layer near the bottom off camera. That's what I figured. I didn't bother to look, but usually that's what the problem would be. If there's any active pixels off screen, then that's what's causing that issue. So, from the perspective, if I want to use one program for animation, would you recommend Tahoma or Krita to start? Tahoma, no question about it. It's more stable. It's got a shallower learning curve. Especially if what you want to do is tell stories and animate, you're going to be more productive much more quickly, I think. Because think of it this way. Krita is an amazing paint program with animation pasted into it. Tahoma is an amazing animation program with painting pasted into it. It's basically the way to think of it. So if what you want to do is tell stories with characters and all the rest, do Tahoma. You can always pick up Krita later if you're, sort of in a process of picking and, choosing what you're going to use. So that would be my recommendation. And you're going to have less... I see what Tom was talking about. Yes. Oh my gosh. Tom, thank you. Actually... Yep. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's do a group thing. And let's just do the same operation again. G key. In erase mode. Erase. That gets rid of the duplicate. And Control E to merge the group. And then Control S to save our work. And Control R to render that puppy out into the show. So thanks, Tom. I appreciate the... It is like layer masking. It's the same thing. It's all the same stuff, And Tahoma does all that stuff too. It's just that in Tahoma you pretty much have to do a lot of it through the schematic. And you only really see the result when you're in render mode. Is that a problem? Well, it depends if you think it's a problem or not. It depends on the person. So, back to the show. Over here. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah. Now there, again, characterization's way the heck off. Ooh, boy. This is okay. This is, you can see right there. Because I'm sure what I did was I was going to say I probably started the next shot with the last frame of the previous shot, but I don't think I did. It looks to me like it's somewhat modified. Who knows why. This is a great example of Blender, where Blender would help too. Now, in this case, it wouldn't quite work because this eyebrow really needs to be crossing over top of the headband. If it wasn't for that eyebrow, though, you could go into Blender with shape keys and just morph. You could just morph it, and you could fix it. So, anyway, okay, so I'm going to say, you know what, guys? I think I'm going to wrap it up because I'm seriously struggling with the sun shining in my face. So, it's definitely been a fun session, and I appreciate you guys coming out, catching the show. Hope you found it useful. I actually had considered doing this and looping some music in the background right here. I was going to copy Darren and loop music in the background. So now I'll give you guys a couple minutes of looping music. Is the volume of that music about right? Sufficiently in the background that it's not like too intrusive or whatever. Nobody's talking. Well, I guess with that, I think I will wrap it up because this sunshine in the eyes thing is getting kind of old. So anyway, again, thanks everybody. And as you guys know, there absolutely will be more later.